Spooky.
Ooh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mack Flash Five, the show where we like to list our 5 movies of a certain subject. And today should be no secret. It's Halloween.
Boo!
Second part of our Halloween 2-parter. I am Bat Robbins. With me is Spooky Scott Deadspins. Deadspins?
Spins.
Amazing. Mike A. Romeo. And usually we have AB with us, but
I don't think you can make it
an empty graveyard.
Yeah.
What?
Good evening.
Yes.
I think he's dead. I
am.
You are?
But yet, I'm alive.
I am Android Brian.
Android Brian, that's right. It's Halloween. And clearly this is, I'm barely going to even ask. AB, this has got to be your favorite holiday, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely love Halloween. I love seeing people get ready for, get their costumes ready. I love seeing people putting their spooky displays up around town. I love seeing all the stuff in the stores, and obviously I love watching horror movies. So, and I love, this is the time when other people like to watch, like normal people like to watch horror movies too. And
normal
people, the normies.
I'll be honest,
normies.
you're talking about me. This week in preparation for this. I can't wait to do this list because I went a lot of different ways on this. This is movies that like Halloween adjacent that you watch on Halloween, and I did a lot of research for it, watching horror and watching ones that you wouldn't have thought, and spooky, creepy things like that. So that I'm very much the normie who can kind of indulge for a little bit of time, and then once it's over, it's okay. November 1st is Christmas in the car until Remembrance Day, and then it's Christmas.
Hallmark movies is a. I gotta ask a little off topic. Well, no, not off topic. Halloween candy that you liked getting in your pillowcase or whatever. And don't say big size chocolates. We know that. What's your favorite actual treat that you got in your bag? When you pulled it out, you're like, this was a good night.
My favorite, you go to the stores and you see all the boxes of the variety packs and stuff. And my favorite is the M&M, Mars, Snickers.
Okay.
And
I have those upstairs right now. I eat them every day. And Twix.
And Twix, that's right. That's my favorite pack. Any one of those shows up in my pillowcase, like you said, is a perfect.
It's not
pack.
bad.
Yeah,
I loved all the sour stuff. So I loved like the sour keys and
candy
and sour kids, the little mini packs of sour kids, and the cherry bombs.
Yeah. Yes, sour grapes.
Yes,
cherry blasters.
Cherry blasters. That's
no, I agree with that. Chocolate's my life. Like chocolate's my favorite thing, but Halloween was always memorable when I would get sour keys, sour snacks, Swedish berries, fish, things like that. So
I'll tell you what I don't like is candy corn and
where do you guys fall on black licorice?
Nope.
Burn it.
Nope. Yeah.
Same. Yeah. That's awesome. Cool.
Yeah, good. No. You know what I enjoyed?
United on our hate for black licorice.
I both loved and hated. I loved for the flavor nerds, but they were so tiny that what I liked to try and do is get as many of the little ones as I could, and then I would pour them all out into a bowl, so I would have like a regular size amount of nerds. Like,
yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
awesome.
Here's the worst Popeye sticks. Yeah,
I like
if
Popeye
I just jumped
sticks.
up.
I do
too.
too.
They were just a waste.
Man, I'll tell you what. When I was a little kid, I was actually there for the transition. When I was a little kid, they had the Popeye cigarettes, and you could actually blow into them, and like a puff of smoke would come out.
That's right.
And
I think you were just smoking cigarettes.
You have tobacco.
I smoked cigarettes. Man, and I remember like there was a big, huge hoopla over that, and like we all thought it was the coolest thing ever. And then like literally like maybe the next year, it was like nope. And they got smaller, and they went like they're the size they are now, which is like not cigarette size. They're like little tiny things. So it was funny. You're like, no, we don't want the kids looking like they're smoking. We all still think they're smoking. Yeah. Hilarious.
That's funny.
Right. But outside of candy, if some houses would give out like cans of pop, that was amazing.
Wow.
Least favorite though, bags of chips. I don't like fun size bags of chips.
It's fine. Sure, okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not my favorite.
You know what though? The problem with them, I find, and I don't know what the deal with this is with stores. They're always just plain chips.
Plain chips.
Yeah.
Or cheesies or plain chips.
Yeah, it's true.
I feel like cheese is the big one. Doritos, I feel like I got, but
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
plains,
okay.
Ruffles.
Ugh,
And it's funny because the bags are smaller than like bags you could get at Subway.
Oh yeah.
No,
True.
like a combo bag. They're smaller than that. They're just
there's like
so
4
annoying.
chips in it.
Yeah. If they were whole chips at all. I got bags of
Yeah, that's right.
dust.
100 crumbs.
Crumbs.
100...
Yeah.
Oh, anyways. That's one
Sorry.
aspect of Halloween we like. The other is the Halloween movies. Movies we like to watch on Halloween. The premise of the show is after we set a topic, the 4 of us go our separate ways and come back with our top 5 lists. We're going to share those lists with you. We're each going to name, we're going to do it in descending order. We're going to do our top 3, 2, give you our honorable mentions, which will be 2 films, and then our number 1. AB, since this is your favorite holiday, I think we'll start with you. What is your number 3?
Okay, so this was tough for me because I was like, this is my bread and butter. This is like the time that I thrive. Is like I want to. There's a million movies I could throw in here, so I decided to go one direction and go. I think that these kind of movies work best for Halloween, especially for Halloween. If you're at like a Halloween party with a bunch of people, I think that the best choice to put on, what kind of movie to put on, is an anthology. And for anthologies, there are a ton of horror anthologies that you could watch. I'm going to highlight a few of them. My number 3 is a horror anthology from 2007, directed by Michael Dougherty, and that is. Hold on.
This is one scene from it right now, I think.
I can't find my. Oh, here it is. Sorry.
I know.
Trick or Treat. Okay, so this is Trick or Treat from 2007, directed by Michael Dougherty. It is a horror anthology that. So horror anthologies, what happens is there are a number of different segments, short stories within the film, and there's usually a wraparound. And what that means is it usually starts with a segment, a little short segment, and then at the end of the film, that wraps up the film with the end of that segment. And so that's why it's called the wraparound. What Trick or Treat does, it has as a wrap through, and all of the segments are all interconnected, and they all tie into one another. And the character in the middle here, well, actually, I'll go to the next slide here, which is Sam. This is Sam, and he connects all the segments together. He appears in all of them, wandering through, and he appears in one major segment. There is a segment with some lovely ladies here, including Anna Paquin on the left there. And you find out there's a secret between. It's a very good segment. I'll say you would enjoy that segment, Scott. I heard that. And then there's another segment with Mr. Brian Cox, and he's a cantankerous old man who doesn't like kids come around, and you find out why later on. I won't spoil any of these things. There's another one with some creepy kids with a school bus. And then there's the school principal with this kid, and there's something nefarious about that as well. And so, like I said, they all intertwine, they all connect to one another, and I really like that a lot. That it's not just these random stories, like most horror anthologies are just these random short stories, basically short films that are connected just at the beginning and the end of the movie. They are all intertwined, and I really, really like that. So what I like about horror anthologies at like a Christmas party, Halloween party, is you can throw it on, and you don't have to watch the whole film. You can sit down for a 10-minute sequence, one of the segments, and you can go about the party and do your thing, and you can come back in whenever you want to. I think that they really work. So for my money, Trick or Treat is one of the best ones from. So like I said, 2007 Trick or Treat, and I know this gentleman down here enjoys that film as well.
Oh yeah, I like a good anthology too, because the reason I like them the most is you could have one little skit, if you want to call it that you don't even really like.
Yes.
But then you could really enjoy another one.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't, as opposed to when you watch a film, if there's a chunk of the film that's not good, it pretty much ruins the film. In a scenario like this, you could be like, oh, okay, I like that one and that one. It kind of makes me think of, like Black Mirror, that kind of thing, although they're longer, obviously. But those have become a new thing nowadays. And like movies like Trick or Treat did it, quite a while back. Sam there is one of my favorite sort of horror, not like sort of under the radar horror icons. Like a lot of people, they'll see him and they'll go, why do I know that character? And they don't realize the movie that he's from. And he's not as big as Leatherface and all those. But man, is he like memorable once you see him and what happens with him. You're like,
it's kind of tough because he's just from the one film, and they're apparently going to be making Trick or Treat 2 at some point, and obviously they'll bring back Sam for that as well. But yeah, it's tough when you have your icon just from one film. So as opposed to a franchise.
Yeah, and it's become a cult status sort of, right, amongst sort of 100%. Horror fans and stuff. So yeah, that's a great pick.
Thanks.
Scott, you seen that one?
No, I was going to add, but I just didn't know if we were running long on it. I didn't know. You guys talk about it because of the pop, obviously. I haven't even really known that thing, that Sam is a character. But I'm 100% going to check it out. We'll get to anthologies later on, but I am desperate for good anthology. It's the best thing you can do. Like we talked about the limited mini series, and we'll get to all this. I don't want to.
Well, Scott, pay attention to my list. I've got a whole bunch.
Otherwise, even then, I'm going to definitely check out Trick or Treat at least next week. I assure you, just because some of those names involved and Dylan Baker, and it's just like, it makes total sense. You have like kind of like that Tales from the Crypt style storytelling with like 3 different stories. It's genius. It's brilliant. Like I said, we'll get to it, but I'm 100% going to check that out. I promise you by this time next week.
You will like Trick or Treat.
Yes.
I will put my money on it. You will like Trick or Treat.
But you're absolutely right. Tales from the Crypt inspired kind of, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
and then even before that, the
I didn't know that that's
from
what it
EC
was.
Comics.
Just when you guys were talking about that figure, I was like, that's whatever. I don't really care about that. They're all interchangeable horror. But as soon as you said anthology, I was like, oh, I was way wrong. I was way wrong on that.
Yeah, he's neat. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
All right. So
you're number 3.
Yeah. So it's funny because like Scott, I think said earlier, we're going to have sort of very different lists for different reasons, which I quite enjoy when we have that happen. I initially, when this list came up, the first thing that popped into mind is I'm just going to throw on my top 3 favorite horror films, piece of cake. I know those, with my eyes closed. And then I thought, well, no, this isn't really like a horror topic. I mean, horror movies can be in here as Trick or Treat proves. But I thought, I'm going to save my best horror movies because really, it's funny. I don't really watch horror movies at Halloween. I tend to watch them just when they come out or when it tickles my fancy to do like a whole series of 10 movies or whatever, and I'll just watch them then. And because as you guys know, that's sort of one of my favorite genres. So then I went, okay, no, I'm going to just pick movies that are all at Halloween, because there's a lot of films where this is the film takes place at Halloween or around Halloween. And then I thought, I'm kind of stretching it. I'm going to just go with what I think of when I think of Halloween, like Matt said, was childhood. So what I'm going to pick here, or what I did pick and share with you, are films that I've watched sort of all throughout my life. Not when I was like a little kid per se, but ones that when I was of a certain age that I was old enough to watch them, they really creeped me out. And so to this day, they're good quality films. They're good laughs. There's a little bit of spookiness to them, but they remind me of what Halloween is to me, which is a kid's holiday, right? So I'll start, and that's my running thing through all 5 of mine. But I'll start with my number 3 after that long little blurb there. And that is a film directed by a man named Joe Dante. Now, this is a hard guess here because it's probably not the one most people will think right off the bat. It is actually 1989's The Burbs.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
I knew it.
That's great.
It is The Burbs. This is a neat little poster there. I sort of summarizing everything that kind of occurs. I just I can't get enough of this movie, and it's one of these movies that it kind of falls off my radar almost every year. And even on this list, it almost didn't make it. And then I was watching another film, and I went, "Oh, this reminds me of The Burbs." And how did I not? And I just love it because it's Tom Hanks. It's funny Tom Hanks, right? It's silly Tom Hanks. It's not, Oscar winning, that kind of bait sort of thing. It's goofy. Bruce Dern he's an absolute riot.
I was gonna say, even though it's goofy Tom Hanks, he's kind of playing the straight man.
It's right. It's the perfect bridge into the Philadelphia.
And he's doing goofy stuff.
Well, I mean, he's definitely goofy throughougult.
Oh, 100%.
You're right.
Because it's the situations that make him goofy, right?
I mean,
he is goofy in it, but he's kind of the straight guy.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the whole premise is it takes place in the suburbs, and it's like everybody's happy and their neighbors and silly. The biggest deal problems are the dog pooping on the lawn and just stuff like that, right? And then all of a sudden, these neighbors move in. And just creepy stuff happens, like they're digging in the backyard in the middle of the night and, digging holes. And then these weird lights go off in the basement. And it's just, everything seems very shady. So the neighbors kind of, who are sort of friends or at least acquaintances, kind of decide together that they're going to figure out the problem. And they think it involves dead bodies and a missing neighbor, and just slapstick ensues. And just, man, like every single part, Corey Feldman at his prime. Just goofy, just sitting there on the play-by-play, just, inviting his friends over to watch the neighbors basically break into the house, and just the silliest things. And hey, guys, just wait, I got the pizza guys coming. Like, that's his constant line, which I think actually, to be honest with you, set him up for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, voicing Donatello, talking about pizza so much in this movie. I think that's where he got that role. But I don't know, just Carrie Fisher's even in this too. Which I totally forgot, which is funny because I knew it, but then I'm watching, I'm like, oh yeah, and this like for me, this is her only role that I really see her in other than Star Wars, and
Jay and Silent Bob.
Also good.
But when I think, well, yes, but I mean as an actual long elongated role. But the thing about The Burbs though for me is two things. One, it really has that Rear Window vibe, that Hitchcock kind of vibe of, what's happening with the neighbors. Something's going wrong. I'm going to solve it. I'm going to figure this out. Yeah. And it's the music. Like, man, if there is ever a movie that when the notes start playing, right, and the organs, like it's all organs, right? Yeah. And when that starts playing, I'm like, oh man, this movie's just got the right amount of creepy and silly that it, it didn't scare me as a kid, but it creeped me out. And so that's why that's my number 3, The Burbs.
I love art in there. Is it Rick Ducommun?
Yeah, the poor man's Dan Aykroyd.
Yes, and man, it's definitely, you've seen him in a ton of movies, but this is definitely his best role.
I would not have known his name.
And he kills it for me. I love, my favorite scene in the whole movie is when Tom Hanks has got his hand over his ears and he's like, I'm not going to listen to you, and he's like, Art's like, listen to yourself. You're chanting right now. Satan is good. Satan is my pal. I want to kill everyone. Every time I laugh so hard at that. Like, but yeah, that movie is pure gold. I love it every time.
For us guys too, funny little part in there that I just was laughing at. I forgot about where they sit down, Tom Hanks and Carrie Fisher, because they're married in it, and they're sitting down to watch Jeopardy. And they watch it, they watch it every night, and they sit down, they're writing their answers down, and he interrupts them, and he has to leave, and he's all mad. I'm just like, for us trivia guys, I love that, sitting down every night. But anyways, that's my number 3. So Scott, what you got?
Cool. Very cool. That was a good call. So same thing as you, and I want to get, as soon as you said movies to watch at Halloween, as not a horror person, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to put horror films. And I had 5 A-list stellar horror films that I was going to burn. But then as I thought a little more, you're right, there was a little bit broadening my thought search. And my 3 and my 2 are going to be interesting because not technically the films themselves as far as what they represent. So certainly what I like to watch, and there's certainly a director's body of work, and we're going to get into that I like to watch in October as kind of the build up for Halloween. And when you're talking about the best feelings of Halloween, it includes creepiness and suspense and horror and all this stuff. And that's why my number 3 will revolve around this man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I go with Alfred Hitchcock and the fact that every October, I make it a point to watch as many Alfred Hitchcock films as I can. There's something about the change of the season. There's something about October itself being lends itself to the kind of Alfred Hitchcock's what he was going for, being the master of suspense, which in this beautiful box set contains like 25 of his films. And I thought, I'm like, well, what film am I going to pick as my number 3 to personify this? Should I go with Psycho, which is his most famous work, or should I go with North by Northwest, which is probably him at his most, the peak of his powers? I thought maybe Rear Window, but that's kind of a summer movie because it's hot, very hot, so you can't really get that fall feel in it. So I didn't want to lie to myself, and I changed this right half an hour before we started, but I picked this movie from 1948, Rope, starring James Stewart.
Yeah.
So this is directed by Hitchcock, and what it is there's a dinner party, and there's 2 guys. There's Brendan and Philip, and they want to know what it's like to kill a man. So they murder their friend David. But in doing so, and it copies the same kind of vibe as Strangers on a Train, where there's one very in control psychopath and one very meek, timid person. Like I said, they strangle David to death, and in doing so, they hide his body inside the trunk that they serve the dinner for their dinner guests on. And they invite their old college professor, James Stewart. They invite David's parents, David's dad, David's aunt, David's ex-girlfriend, and David's friend. And when they're there, it's kind of just the dinner party unraveling. And the one thing that makes this movie exceptional is Hitchcock's directing style in it. It's all shot as one take. And now that's common. 1917 did it. Birdman did it. But this was 1948. And this was very ahead of its time in doing so. You can see the cuts. They do like the, on the back and as it goes. But it all takes place essentially in real time over the course of an hour 50 as guests arrive. And it plays out in one location set with the kitchen. And in doing it, Brandon's got control of the whole thing. He's almost arrogant in getting away with the murder, and he's planting little seeds. And as he's doing this, Philip's getting more and more and more nervous, and it kind of becomes this cat and mouse game between Philip and Rupert Cadell, played by James Stewart, who taught them in college about the perfect murder and things like this. And he starts piecing together what's going on, and something's not right about this. And as it's going, it's just kind of, like I said, once it gets to its apex, it's very, tame by most standards. And it's more just in the fact that Hitchcock can craft this kind of film. And then, like I said, the time that it was done, the fact that it plays like a play, and then watching these characters kind of unfold with their actions in real time. So I'm going to choose what represents the filmography for me of Alfred Hitchcock, 1948's Rope.
Awesome.
That's great. Obviously a classic, but I haven't seen it yet.
Sure. And there's
my Hitchcock box set is smaller.
Okay.
It's not on that one.
Like there's so much. Like I saw Saboteur last year. I can't say I've seen Shadow of a Doubt. Trouble with Harry, Vertigo I've seen years ago, Psycho obviously. There's a ton on this that I always like to knock off. And like I said, it's something about September, October that really lends itself to diving into Hitchcock. So I wanted to pick what my favorite Hitchcock was to represent. And I could have gone with some of his more, mainstream work, but I think Rope is probably one of his unheralded classics.
During the lockdown earlier this year, I had the Criterion collection, and one of the things I did was knock off all the Hitchcock movies I hadn't seen yet. So I think that there are 4 that I haven't seen that are basically unavailable.
Sure.
So I've seen everything that I could possibly have seen that you can see. So that was one of the things I was pretty proud. Like it's pretty sad. Like people are like learning a new language and all that stuff, and like I feel great because I finished all the.
Oh, that's exactly films. Where I want to be. Like I said, that was a lovely thing. He directed 60 movies, 61 movies, I believe. And I want to make sure I do that as well. I follow a few Hitchcock podcasts too. So
one of the great things about him too is like he like you said, he does obviously a lot of horror and suspense and things, but he also does, like, The Trouble with Harry is a comedy. He does all kinds of stuff. People always think about him as like this like murder mystery kind of thing, or like a suspense guy, but he dabbles.
Sure. And the one thing I want to get out of here that I really like too about Rope, not to spend too much time. So both of these actors, of Philip and Brandon, were homosexuals, and so was the writer. And Hitchcock said, "I want you to play it like you guys are a gay couple." And in 1948, that's wild. And you watch that movie, and there's like kind of homoerotic undertones to it, and you're just like, this movie is unbelievable. And like I said, it goes to the year just being one take, and how they're kind of talking to each other, and how, like I said, Hitchcock was so like woke to the fact to be like, yeah, I want you guys to be a gay couple. And you watch that and you pick up on that the second, third time you view it. And exactly. So my number 3 is Rope.
Cool.
Great. For my list, I was thinking similar to Mike when he was talking about, well, I'll just do horror movies. And then it came up in discussion, maybe we'll just do a horror movie episode. So I was like, okay, I got to rethink this then, because I only like 5 horror movies. My list is, finite. So I'm going with a more comedic twist on mine. So great. My number 3 is The Addams Family.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. Perfect.
This movie is so funny. So much that it ruins the TV show, the original TV, because I saw this so often, and then I went back and watched the TV show for like the first time. I was like, this is not hitting the same beats that the movie does. And it's a combination of wonderful dialogue and just a cast of character actors. Raul Julia is dialing his performance up to 11, and it's still not enough. He's so good. He can, just jump off the screen and yell at people in the audience if he wanted to, and we'd eat it all up. Angelica Houston is looking terrific in this. Christopher Lloyd, character actor extraordinaire. I mean, the guy is, genre movie royalty between this and Back to the Future, Star Trek, Roger Rabbit. He never plays the same character twice. I mean, I'm going to go into a Doc Brown rant. He was scared about doing Doc Brown for Back to the Future 2, because he was like, I don't know if I can capture that same performance again, because he never performs the same way. And that's true of even Uncle Fester. He plays it one way because he's playing a guy who's like a con artist, faking his way to being Uncle Fester. And at the end, he gets his memory back. So by the second movie, you have a brand new kind of character, because Uncle Fester has returned, and he's far more, over the top, and, an Addams for sure. But the dialogue is amazing. I love the jokes. Verbal joke. Well, I guess it's a physical thing too, but they do not the same joke over and over again, but the same setup where they say one thing, another thing, punchline. My favorite is where they're going through the closet. Lurch pulls out, a big sack. Morticia, Uncle Knick-Knack's summer wardrobe, throws it on the ground. Uncle Knick-Knack's winter wardrobe, throws it on the ground. Pulls out another sack. Uncle Knick-Knack.
Uncle Knick-Knack,
And they do that kind of setup joke so much through the movie. It's absolutely hilarious. I'm not going to go too much further, but this is definitely my number 3.
Well, it's like you said, like the stuff that works shouldn't, like, the books on the shelf and they open it up, Gone with the Wind, and like you have all these things where you're like, oh, it's so cheesy, but it works. It's
fun. I love the dance that they do.
The Babushka.
Yes, that's definitely my favorite part in the film, and it's kind of like the way to like figure out that he actually is Fester, that he knows the dance and can perform the dance.
Yeah, it's that muscle memory you can't get rid of. He knows
can't get rid of. Yeah, I love that part.
And I think you're right, Matt. That the second one is good as well. Addams Family Values, but there's something about that first one. Like it's like when the animated film came out, I watched it and I was like, no way. Like the show I can't get into. It's just like that is the perfect representation of that family.
And it's too bad about that animated movie.
I
because
know.
when I saw that cast, I was like, this would be an amazing live action Addams Family.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've had this conversation before where nowadays voice acting casts, it's just misleading. You can't even now go, oh, look at all those names. It is not indicative of a good quality film nowadays for voice
Shark's
acting.
Tale. You can look at that.
I don't know about that. And Martin Scorsese in an acting role.
Woof.
Another interesting thing about the Addams Family movie is that they used the theme song from the TV show, and then they got sued for it. Because when you want to create a new property or piece of media for the Addams Family, you have to go back to the original comic strip, the Charles Addams newspaper comic strip. So the TV producers did that, and they got their TV show. The movie people, Barry Sonnenfeld and the producers, went to the Addams estate and said, we want to make a movie. He said, okay. And then they used the TV theme song. Well, they weren't allowed to do that because it's not the same property, technically. So every time
they called Hammer.
Yeah, I remember there was
they called MC Hammer.
The
Addams Family.
That was one. Was it one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that song.
So every time a new Addams Family TV show comes out or they reboot the movie, it will not be the same as this movie or the show or even maybe the comic strip. They had a Broadway musical for a while too. My number 3, Addams Family.
That actually just got bumped off my list. It would have been on my honorables and just got bumped. Yeah.
All right,
I think I actually had that cassette single of Addams Groove by MC Hammer, for the record.
None of us are surprised by that.
I did love me some Hammer, I won't lie. All right. We're gonna go to my number 2. My number 2 film. Okay, so I talked about anthologies. This is kind of a little bit different. This is one of my favorites from a franchise, and it was meant to be an anthology. And so I'll just get to it. John Carpenter made Halloween in 1978, and he wasn't involved with 2. He didn't want to do 2. Didn't want to be part of it. And so they got somebody else to do it, and he wasn't involved at all. So they kept it was both of them were success, 1 and 2. So they're like, we want another Halloween movie. We want another Halloween movie. You got to do another Halloween movie. So they approached John Carpenter. John Carpenter didn't want to direct, but he decided to executive produce along with his wife, Deborah Hill, and he got his buddy Tommy Lee Wallace to direct, and he got music. And so I'm of course talking about 1982's Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
The Halloween without Michael Myers.
That's right. And so what John Carpenter intended to do was he wanted the series to become an anthology. And so each variation was going to be something that it took, because each movie took place on Halloween. Sorry, I'm going to go back there. Each story took place on Halloween. It was going to be a different story that took place on Halloween. I forgot to mention that a bunch of my stuff takes place on Halloween. So Trick or Treat takes place on Halloween. This takes place on Halloween. So what happens is, and this was going to be Mike Myers' Halloween movie, and so people were pissed. People were mad. Mike Myers wasn't in it. People paid to see Mike Myers. They wasn't going to be in it, so it bombed. It actually didn't bomb. It actually made its money back. I think it made 14 mil. The budget wasn't all that much, but the word of mouth got out, and the critics hated it, and people hated it because it didn't have Mike Myers. And so they just panned it all together. But this movie is awesome. I've loved this movie. And so when we were talking about this topic of movies that we're going to watch on Halloween, my number 2 and my number 1 are actually movies that I watched pretty much every Halloween for a long, long time. I think it started because they were on TV when I was really young. And actually was listening to a podcast today and the as they were talking about this one, and they were apparently both of them were from Detroit, because they're like. He said, "Well, we're from Detroit, and back then we had on Channel 20, we had the Thriller double feature." And my eyes lit up. I was like, "Yes, you understand. Like this is how I watched it too." Like, and so this and my number one, where I both saw on Channel 20 Thriller double features, and they would play it on Halloween because it was a Halloween movie, and so. Yeah, I loved it, and I still love it. I still think it's fantastic. This is Tom Atkins, who's one of my favorite genre guys. He is fantastic in it. It's kind of a running gag for him is that he always gets the ladies, and literally everyone who is female in this movie, like basically is all up ons Tom Atkins in this, and like within like a scene of him being with the much younger woman here. He's in bed with her, and like he slaps he's a doctor, and he gets roped into this nefarious plot that's been going on. He's trying to figure out detective style, and so he works in this hospital, and he like smacks one of the nurses in the ass, and then she smacks him in the ass, and they're like, ah. I'm just like laughing. I'm like, oh man. Tom Atkins gets the ladies. And so the nefarious plan is by this man, Colin Cochran, and played by Dan O'Hurley, and he is basically a Bond villain. Like he sets it up like a Bond movie where he's got this ridiculous plot where they've stolen a stone from Stonehenge, and they are going to put the magic that's involved in that into these Halloween masks for kids. And you heard that music that was playing at the beginning there, the do 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 do, that's playing on these commercials. And so when they have this big giveaway on Halloween night, and all the kids are going to wear their masks, and they have this transmission through the TVs, and it causes their kids to die. And so like it's pretty intense. Like it's really intense. Like these kids, like the scene where the kid gets killed is pretty gruesome. And so it's kind of a ridiculous like scheme by thing. Like I said, like it's kind of a Bond scheme where it's so weird and like ridiculous and over the top. But like Dan O'Hurley plays it so perfectly, and like he doesn't. It's not like tongue in cheek. It's not like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He plays it straight up, and so that's one of the bonus for it. And it all accumulates into the final scene, which is one for the ages. It's got a very iconic ending. I won't spoil it, but it ends with this shot, and it just cuts to black. And if you've seen it, it is a heart stopper. I love the ending. I love everything about it. Yeah, so that's my sorry, I went long, but that's my number 2 is Halloween 3. I love people. When you're talking about horror movies, this is probably one of the most divisive horror movies that you'll ever talk about, because there are the people there's the camp that like think it's a masterpiece and love it, and I'm one of those people, and there are a lot of people that are on my side, and then there's like the complete opposite people that think it's like complete and utter trash, and they're like, this is pure garbage. How's it even part of this franchise? Blah 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 blah. And screw those people.
Well, I think you have to. The two camps differ, because you have to. If you're in the one camp, you can realize that this really should have been a film by itself, and if you're in the other camp, you're like, Michael Myers is great. I mean, Michael Myers for me is one of my least favorite horror icon villains.
Yeah,
and I am sort of with you and many in that I really wish that Carpenter got to do what he wanted to, which was multiple different movies where each movie took place on Halloween and was a different
all
villain.
The sense.
Yeah,
it would have been just like Saw, where there's even then there's a background character of one, they explore his story in 2, and that's the one thing that the Saw movies do really well, where they take characters and draw. And again, but I could have seen Halloween be like that, where you introduce characters who get their own film, and then it tells a completely different
like I would have loved story. I think I would have loved Michael Myers so much more if there literally was just one Halloween with him.
Sure.
And because they just
technically there's just 2 now.
yeah. According to
no, the one's already in production. There's another one that's in production.
No, but we know what he means. But that's true, and that's how I treat them, Scott. Like I treat the original.
See, I like 2 though. Oh, as a kid, I think I saw 2 first, and I love Pleasance in that movie. I remember being a kid being like, Pleasance is the man in 2. Yeah. I hate that they nullified that, the sister stuff.
Well, I mean, you don't have to take it as a nullification, but for me, I love that I can go from the original to the newest, and those work together, and that's all I need.
3's the only one I haven't seen, but I got to go back. I'm gonna go give that a shot too. That's an easy watch that I could do at work one day. So
you're gonna love Tom Atkins, man.
Probably.
You're gonna love him. He's a smooth pimp.
And that makes so much sense. I remember just being like, Halloween 3 was not a bad call to make a new story because 2 ended so well.
There's a book that just got released. I want to say maybe 2 weeks ago called Taking Shape 2, and there's a Taking Shape 1, and it was all about the making of Halloween.
Was that the Mist movies?
Yeah, and all the there's like all these different plots of Halloween movies that never made it to the screen, and so there's a whole book of one that fills out all these plots that they could have gone they could have used, and so I'm interested to see it. I'm hoping there's going to be an audiobook because
I don't like to read my book.
I just don't have time to sit down and read. I do audiobooks, so hopefully it comes as bundle.
All right, let's chuck along here. So you'll notice not only with my Halloween films are they sort of snapshots of my youth, but you'll notice they take place around a certain time because of that. So we're going to go from 1989's The Burbs to 1987's Kick 'em in the Nards.
Yeah. Woo!
Monster
I wish I'd worn my shirt.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to tell you. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't want to tell you. This is making my list for a couple of reasons. One, it had the right amount of scary to really scare me when I was younger, because I would have been, 7 or so when this came out, and I wouldn't have seen it right away, probably when it made the movie network or whatever. But what it did for me was it introduced me at a young age to what you would call, the universal monsters, if you want to call them that, right? Yep. And so Wolfman and Frankenstein's monster, but not only that, it also had this really cool, Goonies feel. I consider this the Goonies horror movie because you have this geeky group of kids who claim to know everything about horror movies, although they don't really, because they don't even know what completely kills the Wolfman, right? They don't, but and they sit around talking about it, and you hear the arguments about where they're trying to sort of recruit one guy in, and they have to ask him questions like, is Frankenstein his name, or is he Frankenstein's monster? And those silly little kinds of questions. And I just really enjoy it for that moment where it's a film where you have this like all-star, cast of monsters for no real reason. It's kind of inexplicable. Like I thought when I rewatched it would make more sense to me. But somehow Dracula kind of recruits all the old monsters. Yeah. I don't even know how the creature from the Black Lagoon even really gets there. He just comes out of the lagoon near the kid's house. But nonetheless, you can sort of suspend disbelief. And you got all these little monsters here, and their main goal is to essentially kill the one kid. And I don't know, it's just the right amount of funny and creepy. There's a lot of musical montages, which are perfect for 80s movies. And, it's still got pretty decent special effects and makeup for what is a sort of a cheesy movie. And who was written by? I just blew my mind.
I was just about to say I was going to blow Scott's mind with this, but you can
Shane
blow
Black
mine too.
Shane Black.
Cool. So,
yeah.
Wow. So that was
I was like
one of his first. That's cool.
Yeah. So this is one of his early ones before like Lethal Weapon.
I knew nothing about this movie.
Interesting. It is mind blowing because it's not set at Christmas.
Yeah.
Before he had that clout.
Yeah.
So it's
the
just
Weapon was the same year.
I mean, this could be a film though, Scott. Like if you go to watch it now, it might not pull you in because it might be one of those ones that people say watch this and you just don't have a connection.
I bet. Well, I'll say that. I bet I will dig this because that looks cool. That shot, and I just watched the original Fright Night like 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
That movie rules.
I took that. I was going to be on my list, and I took it off.
Yeah, the remake is awesome
Fright
too.
Night.
But the originals, like I'm like, if I saw this when I was a kid, I'd be way more in favor of this. But so like I get it.
And it's silly. There's you got to have the Virgin to help get rid of the monsters and all these weird little silly things. But it just smacks of, like I say, like sort of horrors, Goonies, and like to the point that it's so silly that I think at the end somewhere when finally the monsters are disappearing or whatever. Like Van Helsing shows up and it makes no sense, and he's like, thumbs up, and then and you're like, did he just wait? What? But you don't even care because you just had a good time. So
I like it because they take the monsters seriously. Like you said, there's the horror element in it, and it's not like slapstick. Like it gets slapstick where the Wolfman's got nards and they kick them in the nards, whatever. But the monsters they stayed monsters. It's not like
like Dracula chokes the kid out.
Yeah,
right? Like
they're actually the serious monsters,
awesome.
and so it's really great. Cool. I definitely love it, and I love one of my favorite again genre guys is Tom Noonan as Dracula Frankenstein's monster. He's fantastic, and the makeup is so cool. But right away as soon as you see him, I'm like, oh, Tom Noonan, there we go. I love that guy. It's great. It's definitely one of my all-time favorites for sure.
So worth a watch. So there you go. That's number 2 on my list.
Right.
Cool. Okay, for my number 2, we're going to talk anthology. Now, before we bring up what this is, I'm a little embarrassed because it goes back to my number 3, like I said, what this movie represents as a whole to me, and what I watch and what I love and what I gravitate towards. At really only this time of the year is when I kind of make it a point and watch as much of this as I can. But we're a movie podcast channel, so I wanted to pick this, and we'll dive deep into it. So I'm picking a film from 1983.
Ooh.
And I'm picking the Twilight Zone movie.
Ooh.
This movie sucks. This is going to be the worst movie I pick. But I don't want to talk about the movie in per se. I want to talk about this man who gave us the show, The Twilight Zone. Which is quite possibly one of my favorite things on celluloid of all time. I remember being a kid and being subjected and watching this. I know I was certainly too young to understand it all, but I remember growing up and knowing that there were stories and there was horror and there was creepiness, and then Twilight Zone was its own thing. And I remember just growing up always knowing that Twilight Zone, whatever Twilight Zone was as a whole, was always just a step greater than anything else that could tell. Like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark? That was my era of the 90s. It was all good, but I just knew that the next echelon was always the Twilight Zone. Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, cool stuff like that. So then when I got in high school, I downloaded a lot of episodes and I did this. And like I said, I out of the course of September and October, as the weather changes, it gets a little chillier. As I'm looking for more of a scare, I always gravitate to the Twilight Zone. Now, I put the movie on it because the movie does take elements from some of the episodes. None of the shorts that they do for the films do justice to the skits corresponding. But what I enjoy about the film is the dream team cast that did it. You had John Landis directing the prologue, the epilogue, and the first skit. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Then you have Spielberg doing the second one. You have Joe Dante on the third and George Miller on the fourth. The third being a remake of It Was a Good Life, which is one of my favorite episodes, done horribly for the film, but go watch the episode. And it's unbelievable to the point they did a sequel in the 80s to that. Find that. For the fourth one, Terror at 20,000 Feet with Lithgow. It's great. It's not... What's that?
I'd say that's probably my favorite on there.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
It's still... But it's hard because the concept's great and Shatner does a great job on that too. And then, like I said, the one thing I really like about movies and stuff is, like I said, you can go back through the behind-the-scenes stuff of it and what happened on this movie. In particular, John Landis's skit is legendary. Do you guys know?
Yeah.
Yeah. The death of Vic Morrow is
and
insane.
those kids.
Too. There's so much behind this film. It ended Spielberg. That Spielberg and Landis didn't talk for like 30 years.
And kind of rightfully so too. Like I just watched that Cursed Films thing, the Cursed Film series, and one of them's on there.
I
and
will
like,
never forget being.
Oh, it shows 14.
it. Yeah.
being like 14 and stumbling upon that on like Snopes.com and being like, oh my God. And like, it's burned in my brain. I can remember the exact moment when I saw that skit. It's not in the movie of that scene that happens in Vietnam. They whether your interpretation is the first skit ends properly or they change it, whatever. But on the whole, the concept of the Twilight Zone to me screams October, Halloween, anthology, perfect in that. Now, while I don't think the movie does it justice, I do want to use the movie as a caveat to declare my love for the television show. That, like I said, every October I go through and rifle off as many episodes. I don't find I like to have as much value in the summer or spring. I think it lends itself perfectly to the colder fall weather right before Christmas. So my number 2 is going to be the Twilight Zone movie, asterisk movie. Watch the show instead.
Yeah, I struggle. I have the Twilight Zone the movie, and like after I've seen that, I knew about the story, but then when I saw it in depth on that Cursed Films, I struggle to even want to watch it now because it wasn't even supposed to. They weren't going to release it because of all the stuff that happened, and they kind of got pushed through.
You know
and
who his daughter is?
Who?
Jennifer Jason
daughter, Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yeah. I thought you meant John Landis's daughter. I'm like, no, he has a son,
Max, but he's Bantu. But like I said, there's so much about that. And like I say, even watching it, It Was a Good Life, I think is an unbelievable skit about the 6-year-old with mental powers who can control everything with his mind. I think that is one of my all-time favorite episodes, right up there with Monsters Do on Maple Street and All the Time in the World. It's incredible. The movie does not do it well. They do it very hyper centralized 80s. Watching it, the animatronics fine, but the cartoons is a little silly and all this. It doesn't have the same creepy factor. But like I said, the fact that it's the Twilight Zone to me is like pizza. It's always good no matter what. The theme is incredible. And like I said, there's just something about the Twilight Zone anthology on the whole that lends itself to the spookiness of the season. So to get into it, like I said, I love the Twilight Zone.
Great.
Thanks.
No, I do like that movie very much. And it's interesting because my favorite director being Steven Spielberg has the worst segment in that movie.
It is bad. It's really bad.
Because the other ones have...
It doesn't fit. The kick the can episode with the kids. Like, I get it. It's an allegory and he passes away. But I'm like, they couldn't have put this on the show? Like the reboot? Like the 1982, 3, 4 reboot?
Or even like throw it on like Amazing Stories even. It
wasn't Rod Serling, and like I said, genius himself. Wasn't he doing, what was his other show? Night Gallery. At the time.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't have given me Scatman Carruthers and Night Gallery?
Yeah.
It's fine. What a waste. But like I said, there's so much more. There is so much more stars and episodes in this. Look at this. Look at these discs. Look at all my shit. Okay.
Okay. Moving on to my number 2. Again, we'll keep it in the comedy horror. My number 2 is, again, an absolutely hilarious movie, Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. Is it though?
Beetlejuice.
Oh yes. What do you?
I fucking hate this movie. I hate this movie. I fucking hate Beetlejuice.
Well, you're gonna hear about it a couple times.
See, yeah, we had a bet going on. I knew this was gonna be it.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
I hate this movie. Go on.
Best Michael Keaton film there is.
I won't argue. Or I don't think I can disagree. His performance is
not even top
amazing. 5. Is what? Not even top 5?
Not even one
Michael
of his top
Keaton?
5. Please continue. It's your movie.
But like I said, it's absolutely hilarious and creepy. It's probably Tim Burton's. It's certainly my favorite Tim Burton movie. I've always thought he was very overrated as a director, but this is certainly his wheelhouse. And it's original. Like, I mean, he didn't write it. He had people write it for him, but most Tim Burton movies are based on books that have, kind of twisted illustrations that he can make his own. And he did 2 Batman movies, but and they're amazing, but he was clearly focused on the bad guys. He likes the dark side of everything. Yeah. And Beetlejuice is certainly a nice balance of comedy and not horror, but certainly creepiness. It's the story about a married couple who are about to go on vacation for the first time since their marriage, and they end up dying, and they've decided to haunt their own house. They can't leave the house, so they have to haunt it. A new family moves in, changes their house entirely. They hate it, and so they decide to ask Beetlejuice to be the bio-exorcist. I should have saved that for the question. What is Beetlejuice's job? Bio-exorcist.
People watch it, they get the answer in there.
Yep. So they earn it.
Yeah.
So they hire him to haunt the house for him so he can chase out the living people in there. It has some of the best dialogue in a movie. Michael Keaton's monologue, when they're interviewing him, Alec Baldwin asks him, "What are your qualifications?" And he goes on, it's like, "Well, I attended Juilliard and such," and he just is a slow burn to an absolute. I've seen The Exorcist 137 times. It keeps getting funnier every single time I see it. It kills me every time. Mike's going to talk about it later, or I don't know if he wants to take time now. But I do want to hear what Scott dislikes about this movie, because there's not a frame that I can find wrong with it.
I want to hear it too.
Oh, I just never liked it. I don't know. I thought it was Keaton. I don't know. There's lots I like about Keaton's 80s, and like Johnny Dangerously, Night Shift. You get into like the Batman movies, and maybe I saw Beetlejuice in the mid 90s, and I don't know what it is. Maybe I didn't like the creatures. I didn't like the sense of humor. Like, I don't know. I don't like a lot of Tim Burton when Tim Burton's like at his zaniest.
Right.
I like controlled Tim Burton. Like, I like Returns where he plays and he colors within his lines. And I don't know. I just thought like them with their faces and the dance. Like, I do not like that. What's that song that everyone loves that scene
Deo.
when they're, oh, I hate that like Catherine O'Hara in that scene. I hate that scene. Like, I don't know. And people love Beetlejuice, and I just never got it. I just never liked it.
You got 3 years to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I will reverse that argument, because I think, as Matt said, this is Burton at his best, because I feel like Burton got out of control later, and he tries too hard to be zany and crazy, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Alice in Wonderland, and it's let's make the heads really big, CGI and all these weird things. But this one is like the perfect mix of Elfman's. This is the best Elfman soundtrack. The perfect mix of costuming and special effects, and like it's exactly what I feel like. This is exactly how he pictured it, and it actually worked out that way. That's how I think of it. Like, I think this is his Michael Keaton's best role written for him, and I think this is Burton's best collaboration with Elfman, in my opinion. Like, all three of them. This is why this one will get my number one later.
I think why Tim Burton works early on is because that he's still trying to prove himself, and so he's got to prove himself to the studios and prove himself by doing all these things. Whereas now in those late terms, like Disney and everything are just shoveling money at him, being like, "Do whatever you want to. We don't give like just do everything." And so like he gets out of control because he's got no budget restraints, and he's got no restraints on him to like succeed, because he's Tim Burton, right? And so back then he was at Walt. It is funny because he was at Walt Disney as an illustrator, and then wanted to branch off and do darker things and his own kind of thing. And so he had something to prove. And so I think back in these times, he had something to prove, and he didn't have the massive budget. So he had to do the practical, cool effects and stuff like that. And it showed. And I think that was part of the thing, was the budget constraints. And like he had a short leash. He had a shorter leash back then.
It was Pee-wee's Big Adventure was before this.
That's my jam.
That is
my jam.
That was his feature debut. And then this, and of course he did a great job. Yeah. So studios were like, well, okay, what do you want to do next? Well, I have this. And there's, okay, you can do that. This was successful. And I mean, him and Michael Keaton obviously got a relationship, and then they got to do Batman, which was a massive blockbuster hit. So then studios are like, okay, write your own check and start.
Yeah.
Don't
you like to think of that one scene there with Large Marge as the setup for what Beetlejuice would become? Like
100%. Yeah.
That's
Beetlejuice. Yeah.
Like here's my proposal. That scene.
That's the pitch right there.
Yeah.
And Twilight Zone, the movie, tries that and fails the worst of the three
It's
with
so
Albert
bad.
Brooks. The Albert Brooks.
Oh, that's right.
And it's brutal.
We've mentioned everything to do with this movie except for one thing.
Well,
and I always have to bring her up. Okay.
Save it for my because you do your thing and save it for when we come back around.
So that's everybody's 2. We're gonna go on to our honorable mentions now.
Oh yeah, we are. All right, cool. All right. My honorable mentions. So again, I was going to I put on a couple of anthologies for my honorable mentions. I really wanted to talk about this one, which is Creepshow from 1982, because it is George A. Romero directing and it is Stephen King writing. So it's like the 2 powerhouses for me of one of my favorite horror directors and my favorite horror writer, and Stephen King is actually in it. Tom Atkins is in it on the top right there. And yeah, I love it. So, and that's my other one is from 1995. It's Tales from the Hood, which features my favorite crypt keeper, just Clarence Williams, who's Mr. Sims in the beginning. At the middle. I love Tales from the Hood.
Yeah, good films.
Jam.
Oh, you got to work those buttons. Oh my goodness, it's flashing. Okay. So for my honorables, again, dancing around the same time period, we went from 89 to 87. We're going to go to 1990s Arachnophobia.
Nice.
It's comical. John Goodman's hilarious in it. Jeff Daniels plays a great Dr. Jennings, and I am terrified of spiders, so that works on all levels. And then we're gonna have to put this on there. 1984's Ghostbusters. It's got to make my list.
Yeah. Cool. Glad it did. So like AB said, like something fun about Halloween dipping into a person's filmography, and I certainly do not like him as much as you, and I do not like this movie certainly even a fraction as much. But like I said, it's always fun to dive into some Stephen King around Halloween. So my first honorable mention will be The Shining, because like I said, it's quintessentially a very mainstream Halloween movie. And like I said, the behind the scenes stuff, it makes its own story unto itself. So you can think about that, but I will leave the Kubrick and King love to you down the road. And then second, as far as creepy and fun and all this and feeling kind of cold and rainy, I went with Clue, because that movie is fucking insane. And if you want to watch Tim Curry jack up half-court shots all game and throw a complete game 110 miles an hour, it's 1985's Clue. Christopher Lloyd that you brought up, same year as Back to the Future, did that in the summer, Clue and Christmas.
I like that tagline. It's not just a game anymore.
Yeah. The movie is wild. Insane.
My honorable mentions, Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, that got bumped. Good. I'm glad you got it on there.
And Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Would have loved to have put it on my one.
I say that for Christmas movies.
Sure, of course, you could. So that's it for honorable mentions. Now we're getting into the number 1 spot.
Number 1. Okay, I kind of ruined it already.
What is it? What is
What
it?
could it be? So kind of set this up. I watched this movie a lot on Halloween. It was my go-to thing. I definitely all these movies that I've talked about would not have made my top 10 horror movies. This one would have. I love this movie, but it probably wouldn't have made a top 5 horror movie. So I'm glad that I got it on a list, and that is 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Philip Kaufman. So this movie is a remake from a 1950s movie, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Don Siegel, who is in the film. He actually plays a cameo as a cab driver in a pretty pivotal scene. It also has the star of the 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatcher, Kevin McCarthy, in another pivotal scene where he is basically reprising his role from the first movie, running through the streets and screaming, they're coming, and like it's a really cool little homage to the original. And what this movie revolves around, and we talked about in previous episode, kind of talked a little bit about him. I'm going to talk a little more about him, about one of the most underrated actors I think in Hollywood ever, and that is my man Donald Sutherland. Donald Sutherland is, for my money, one of the greatest actors that we've had in our generation, in our time. I think he's super underrated. I think that he commands the roles that he's in. He really gives this role a lot of compassion, and you really feel for him as things start to unravel. Obviously, the Invasion of the Body Snatchers is part of basically the common knowledge with people. People, even though they might not have seen these movies, they understand the idea of pod people and like the idea of taking over people's bodies and changing and all that kind of stuff. And I can get into the whole idea of, does it represent communism? Does it represent McCarthyism later on? Does it, I think that it plays even more now too than with 2020, with what's going on with politically and all that stuff, where like I watched it the other night and I started think about things in my news feed where I'm like the echo chambers, the people like just spewing forth the same rhetoric over and over and over again, and I'm just like, oh, who are these pod people? But anyway, enough about that. Go back to the movie. The movie, I think, it's really fantastic and has one of the great endings. But it really gives a great sense of hopelessness as things start to get more and more crazy, as more and more people succumb to it. And like Nightmare on Elm Street, the same kind of concept where they get you when you sleep. And so that whole idea of you can't sleep or else they get you, right? They take you over once you sleep, and everybody has to sleep. So how do you stop it from happening? So they start taking speed, they start, taking injections, trying to stay awake, and things start to get a little crazy. It also has an incredible supporting cast. You got my man Jeff Goldblum on the left. You got Leonard Nimoy on the right, and he is a perfect for this role as a psychiatrist. And he is basically, it's obviously purposely casting him as that role, as he's, playing the kind of the Spock, emotionless, kind of rational, all logical, looking at the situation as a completely logical. But then obviously you find out, oh, he's a pod person too. So, spoiler alert. And
everybody's a pod person.
Everyone's a pod person. And so there has one shot in here that kind of really drives home the idea that everything is just there's no hope for them. And it's Donald Sutherland is in the phone booth, and he's trying to call all these different organizations, because he's a health inspector, so he has a little bit of pull, but he doesn't have a lot. But so he's trying to contact all these different agencies, and it has this spinning shot where it's spinning around the phone booth, and he's making all these calls, and you can just feel the frustration and hopelessness that he feels, and it all accumulates to the iconic ending. And I'll spoil it. I don't care. That ending is probably my favorite ending of any horror movie or any movie, probably, period. I think that is a fantastic ending, and I think it holds up even today. And it's like, we talked about Nancy Cartwright in the last episode. Nancy Cartwright is in this as well, and she just goes into hysterics when he does that to her. But I love that ending, and I think it's perfect. The basically a very nihilistic ending that all hope is lost.
I completely agree with that as a number one. I'll take pod people movies along with zombie movies. Those are those. Just dread. You're going to get overwhelmed. There's too many of them. You're outnumbered. It's different than just like one serial killer. And the most frightening thing about the pod people over the zombies, in my opinion, is, okay, you can be overwhelmed by zombies. They're going to try and eat you. But with the pod people, it's that you don't really know if it's really your brother or your mom or your sister or your friend, or if it's a pod person. And so every time you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like a series of tests, right? And I'll take any Invasion Body Snatchers movie. I like the original. I like the 70s one. I even like Body Snatchers in the 90s. I enjoyed that.
Do you like the Daniel Craig one? I saw that one in theaters.
The Invasion, it's
yeah.
not good.
No,
It's not
no.
good. It's not
Yeah.
good.
But I'll even go a step further, which Donald Sutherland is also in. He's in Puppet Masters, the Puppet Masters,
that movie,
in '94, which is essentially another Body Snatchers movie. Although you see it's this creature that attaches itself right to the back of your neck, but pretty much the same idea. And they take over the central nervous system, and there's just a creepy feeling to that, where it's just everyone around you is an imposter, right? And you can't tell who's who, right?
Well, and that's the thing, like, and too, like, you get this whole idea of everyone's changing around you, right? And like, are you going crazy? Is it actually happening, or are you actually losing your mind too, right? And so like that kind of gets dealt with. But yeah, watching it as a kid, that whole concept used to scare the shit out of me. And but at the same time, I loved it. I was all about it.
Well, you have that feeling too of, do I fight it or do I just give in and become one of the masses, right? It's such an age old whatever. Well, no surprise here. There's my number one. Thank goodness we at least had a different poster. I thought this was a really cool one. But anyways, yeah, Beetlejuice, number one. There was really no doubt. 1988, so we went around. We got to 89, 87, 88, 90, kind of my childhood. I won't repeat things that Matt said. He described it quite well, but I will say that some of the reasons I loved it were I really liked the idea of that there's these two simultaneous worlds going on, right? You have the world of the dead, and you get to see a snapshot where they go into sort of the behind the scenes, and they have sort of a caseworker, and how
it's a
how are we
concept.
going to negotiate with the football team and everything. And so
The
I really like
the afterlife has a bureaucracy.
Yeah, exactly. Like this, and like, take a number, and I love those scenes. And actually, I think I had. Let me just pull it up here. I think I have. Yeah, I thought it's a little small there, but I absolutely love all the scenes with the head shrinker, and that's a sort of an end credit one. But just the goofy little cast of characters that you see back there, that they don't really play a huge role in the movie, but they're just comic relief. But anyways, I love the double world thing. I love the sandworm concept of when you leave the house, and if you are dead, if you leave the house, this sandworm will get you. And even so much so that became a huge part of the animated series when that spun off. That was like the big part. This movie has one of my favorite props. It made it to my prop lists. If you want to check top 5 props, handbook for the recently deceased.
Yeah,
I love that idea that there's a book, and did you read the whole book? Well, I tried. I couldn't understand. And that basically tells everything you need to know. And then I think later it's sort of a joke. Is it a book for the living with the deceased that Lydia is reading?
That's true.
And just a few. I just like that in this movie. Not only do the humans and the dead have personalities, but all the other things, like the train set and little town he makes, has its own feel. The house itself, before they gets redone by the Dietzes, and then after, it has a feel. Her sculptures and how they come alive, like just all the little parts really get me. And I think my favorite thing is that I feel like the Maitlands there, Adam and Barbara, they were doing the whole Sixth Sense thing before Haley Joel Osment, we're dead. Oh, I didn't realize, it took them a little while to figure it out. But so that's my number one, and it'll probably stay up there for every Halloween for years to come. So
2 jokes that I've just been reminded. You showed that last scene of the movie, and it's hilarious because he's got his number, 6 million some odd whatever, and it flicks 4.
Yeah, he uses 4. Yeah. Oh, and then he makes up like he takes it, like the guy's not gonna
he's
notice.
like, "Yo, is that Elvis? Hey, King!" And somebody, the witch doctor, turns around, throws his up. Well, I guess I'm next.
Yeah, like he's not gonna notice.
I love that. And then second, Keaton's F-bomb in that movie. It's probably the first movie I saw that has the F word in it.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked about it. Sure. We've talked about it twice now, and her name hasn't come up, and it's criminal.
Don't worry, I got you. Don't worry, I got you.
Winona Ryder?
No, not
Gina Davis. Gina Davis is a lovely woman, and she is amazing in this. So you brought up Alec Baldwin. You talked about all the different things. I'm like, Gina Davis.
But you know what?
Get her name in there.
Yeah, and she's great and all, but this is not her role.
No,
like,
it isn't. It isn't. I just had to give her some respect because Gina Davis rules.
Like I'm not a fan of Catherine O'Hara, but even in this film, I feel like she
is great for that. And her and Jonathan Winters have great scenes together. Like Jonathan Winters is like super annoying, but
I don't think that's
supposed to.
That's not Jonathan Winters. You're talking about Otho or Ortho? I don't think that. Who
are you talking about?
Talking about the guy who does
the big guy?
Design. Yeah, that's not Jonathan Winters.
That's not Jonathan Winters.
It's not.
No. I mean, if they cast a film like a biopic of Jonathan Winters and they needed a young Jonathan Winters,
yeah.
Is that the guy?
I always assumed that was Jonathan Winters.
Ortho, no, he's what's his name? I'll come. Go to Scott.
Is he not Santa in Home Alone when he's like Tic Tacs? Is that not?
No.
Is that who we're thinking of?
No.
Who's that in Beetlejuice? He's in it though,
that
right?
guy's in. Isn't that guy in like Herman's Head, that TV show or something? I think. I don't know if you guys know. I might be dating myself here, but anyways.
Oh man. These guys blew my mind. Oh, Glenn Shaddix.
Yeah,
Shaddix. I always assumed that was Jonathan Winters. I've never
too young. He's too young to be Jonathan.
Gee whiz.
Yeah, but he's good. He's very good as that character.
He's
like
funny.
Yeah. I think that's like all I know him from. Would you know him from?
No.
Well, you thought he was in all of Jonathan Winters.
He's a poor man's. He's a poor man's Jonathan Winters.
Demolition Man. He plays the guy's assistant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So, Scott, what you got?
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I want to go off grid here. I get a lot of shade. I think I do a lot of these lists in advance, and I think you guys think I cement them, and I don't, and I set them and I forget them, and that's not true. I just changed my number one. I just changed it on the fly. No pun intended, because I'm going with 1986's The Fly. He got it up in time. I texted him halfway through the show. We're never going to find out what my original number one was, because I kept thinking, it's not great. It's not great. Everyone's list is so good. Everyone has much more horror than I do. I picked the fucking Twilight Zone movie, which I hate. But I'm like, I want to talk about a movie that legitimately scared me, and I want to talk about this for this reason. And I got some other pictures here. Bring me back up. Seth Brundle. You look at Jeff Goldblum, and you want to say, let's talk about her. Gina Davis.
I was going to say, here's a Gina Davis.
That's an incredible love story. I remember watching it, and you get it, and you get through the movie, and more people are going to know this movie. And I probably saw the Simpsons Trios of Horror episode more, which, again, this makes an incredible double feature. Part of the reason why halfway through I'm kind of talking myself into picking The Fly as my number one is because it goes well with the Simpsons Trios of Horror episode, which is one of the best episodes. There's Seth Brundle he's a scientist. He gets the pods and going. He fuses himself with the DNA of a fly, and slowly throughout the movie, in Cronenberg fashion, I haven't seen a fraction of Cronenberg that you guys have, but what I estimate, he is the master of body horror and mutation and things like that. And this, for me, when I saw it when I was about 11, 12 maybe, and then again when I saw it again at 16 and really focused, and then again subsequently, I realized that I do catch this movie when it's on, and it usually is around this time, and it makes, like I said, when we first originally did this movie was probably my number 2 horror movie. When I revamped my list, I took it off, but as we were thinking, I'm like, shoot, I want to get The Fly back in. And like I said, for the body horror, for the creature that he becomes, incredible. And for the story of Seth and Veronica, Gina Davis's character, their love story, and ultimately the mercy that she shows at the end. And like I said, I like to watch movies for a multitude of things. And then when you watch this movie, and Cronenberg denies that it's kind of an allegory or a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic, but it coincides so perfectly with the AIDS epidemic that you would think that they kind of go hand in hand, that this is kind of Seth Brundle's like fight against HIV. And as it claims him, as like I said, in 1986, this was a monster backdrop of the US. So watching that as a straight horror film, watching the DNA twist, and then seeing it that it, like much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, there might be some sort of conscientious states like backdrop of society to it. And like I said, so for everything, for it being perfect body horror, for it being a really creepy film, and for it having an excellent treehouse of horror, I'm going to pick my number one, 1986's The Fly. on the fly because it was from the clouds, was not on my list until 20 minutes ago.
And one of the best movie taglines, right?
Yeah, be afraid, be very afraid. The score, and I even thought, I'm like, I listened to that Howard Shore score. It's awesome. It's incredible. My number one, I wrote off a list a few weeks ago. I bumped it again. I'll find a spot for you soon, former number one. But today, it's Goldblum as Brundlefly's Day.
Yeah, Brundlefly.
It's a great pick for sure. What you're saying too with the whole thing with the AIDS thing and invasion of things. I was listening to the podcast I was listening to today about a different subject. Was talking about great art is very versatile and it's not rigid, and you can take certain things from it, and that's one of the things is that great art can last through the ages because you can pick different things from it, and it adapts, and you can see certain things from it and take certain things from it. And I think that applies to The Fly, and I think that applies to Invasion of Body Snatchers, is that it's a great story. They're both great stories. And you can see the allegories that are in it, and you can pick from that, and they can adapt to what's going on in the world and what's going on in your world, and you can relate to it. That's one of the great things about that story. Like you said, it's a very great love story, but also has all these
heartbreaking at the end,
heartbreaking things. And so you could even make the allegory as not just an AIDS thing, but as a junkie. Right,
yeah,
you can make that as a drug addict, right? Because I've heard that as well. That it's somebody who's going through drug addiction and
he feels great. He feels pure at the start, and then
perfect, and then crashes, and she has to break it off. You have to break it off with them. Not necessarily with a shotgun, but like
metaphorically.
Yes,
that's great too.
So there's that's one of the things I love about these kind of films that. And a lot of horror gets a lot of bag, right? The people think it as lowbrow, and people think it as not as good cinema. But I think that's bullshit because of stuff like this, right?
I'm of the two minds of that. I think there's a lot of schlock.
Oh, 100%, but I think there's a lot of schlock in regular movies too.
I know,
right?
though, no doubt. Yeah. And I've told you this, that horror, it got me out. And like I said, around like a lot of the James Wan Renaissance and the Blumhouse Renaissance and one of my favorite movies of this year, if you count it as horror, is The Invisible Man, because you can see the care that Leigh Whannell put behind it.
Yeah.
Leigh Whannell, however you say. And you see that movie and you're like, fuck, that movie's awesome because it's got great characters, great story, and it's pulse pounding set pieces. So again, once there's care to it, again, I don't even want to get into the Jordan Peele of it all. Like I said, horror can be done very well.
Yeah, and you can take on a lot of themes that regular films cannot take on directly, and make it again as part of the backdrop, right? It doesn't have to be as in your face. You can do like the whole Romero zombie thing where you can have these allegories for commercialism and for racism and all that stuff, and it's not in your face. It's not preachy, but it's there if you want to look at it, right? And then that's one of the great things again about art is that you don't have to be like with your bullhorn, like, here's my message, blah, 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 blah. But you can still get your message across and do it in a very entertaining and meaningful way. So anyway, that's my little rant. This is my little rant for go pro horror.
Thanks for covering my horror TED Talk.
Let's get to Matt's wonderful piece of art here now.
My number one.
Yes.
My number one of my entire list has been comprised of movies that you could watch on Halloween, but I don't always. These movies have been something I put on any day of the year, more or less, and throw them on. My number one, though, I only watch once a year, and it's around Halloween time. And Scott, don't get too scared.
Yeah.
Earnest, scared, stupid.
PTSD moment.
Did we talk
he's getting
about
twitchy.
This?
He's getting twitchy.
Did I know you like this movie so much?
I think so. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah,
it was on.
You liked it, man.
Was this your number one?
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing that will ever haunt me more than this film as a kid.
On our list of kids movies that wouldn't fly, this was Scott's number one, and it's my number one.
I needed therapy. I legit cried for years. I swear to God.
Again, like on my list, it is so funny. whenever Jim Varney or Ernest is on screen, it is hilarious. When he's off screen and the kids take over, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go get something to drink or hit the bathroom or something. But if he's on and he's talking, it's terrific. He is so funny. He plays he's a garbage man for a small town. And the first thing he does is gets locked in his own garbage truck because he's got this remote control. He ends up inside his own dump truck. And then the walls start closing in and he starts freaking out and he catches his eyes on the gears going. And he's like, oh, I know how to stop it. I'll stick something in there. He finds like a baby doll toy thing. And he's like, and he takes the time to converse with this doll first before he does anything else. He's like, in the voice of the doll, here, I got something here. I got my baby Yoda. He's like, no, Ernest. He's like, no, Ernest, don't throw me in there. He's like, it's you or me, buddy. No. And he throws him, don't do it, Ernest. I know where you live. It's hilarious. It doesn't work. He gets his remote control, pulls the batteries out. It turns off, and he's like, I'm a genius. I've got this figured. And then the law of physics fails him when a little cartoon lightning bolt goes from the battery pack to the remote and then starts closing in on him again. And I died laughing. But the movie is really about him waking up a troll that's been under a tree that his ancestor actually put under there. Just absolute stupidity, because he bumps into Eartha Kitt, who tells him about the legend, and he recites that legend to the kids, and in doing so awakens the troll who's going to come and steal all of the children on Halloween night.
Terrible.
Turning them into wooden dolls and raising his own army of trolls. Which, fun fact,
takes a real left turn after the goddamn garbage pit. That's how much fun this is. Get to the dog. Get to when the dog turns. It's soul crushing.
Interesting thing about his little troll army, though, the troll masks were repaints of the killer clowns from outer space.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I know that's a favorite of you guys for sure.
That was a highbrow movie for you.
Get that cotton candy ready.
But my number one Halloween movie for sure, specifically because I only watch it once a year, and it's every year.
Isn't like the concept of Ernest is just a funny thing when you think about it? Like, yeah, it was a generation of us because he had all the movies. He had a show for a while.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
like
he started on commercials, didn't he? Didn't he start on those commercials?
But like it became this thing, and that was what sort of happened back then, right? He just became this institution, and so they just kept pumping things out, and it was hilarious. And then it was just like, no, done with that, right?
Yeah.
Well, he died.
No, that's not.
But that didn't stop it.
Because he did the voices, voice in Toy Story.
Toy Story.
He did Beverly Hillbillies.
Yeah. But
so,
to be fair, like his movies started sucking. Like,
oh well, yeah,
yes,
it's like
that is true.
It's like a sort of the Leslie Nielsen kind of scenario.
I mean, it can only go on for so long, and
but it's funny.
Shtick.
The idea that worked, because when I think about some of them and I do watch them back and I go, did I think this was that hilarious?
I will say the first, I don't watch Scared Stupid as much, but like goes to camp, goes to jail, and saves Christmas. I'll stand by any of those.
Doesn't goes to jail like the prisoner just hemmed in two rolls?
Yeah. Oh man, goes to jail is legit one of my favorites. Like I watch that. I watch that in theater and saves Christmas.
Saves Christmas is unbelievable.
Yeah,
I love Saves Christmas.
Speaking of which, Goes to Camp was first.
Yep.
Save Christmas was second. Goes to Jail was third. Ernest Scared Stupid was fourth. And I think those four were released by Touchstone or Disney. And then everything else after that
because he went to school where he gets the smart helmet in the locker. I remember that. Back
to school. He played basketball. He went to Africa. He joined the army.
I think these are all like Air Bud movies too.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, does he go to space? Is that when he jumped?
That was probably the script for Rocket Man, to be honest. Remember 97's Rocket Man?
Ernest goes
I would not be surprised if that was an Ernest vehicle, and they couldn't get Barney, and I swear to God, and they repackaged it with
oh my
Harlan
gosh,
Williams.
Ernest Goes to Space.
I bet any money.
Oh, I see it too. Like he's a NASA janitor because he always plays a janitor. Maintenance guy. Somebody says the space shuttle needs cleaning. He's mopping. He hits the launch button with his elbow. That makes all the
sense in the world. I bet.
And he's on his way to Mars.
That's hilarious. It always goes to space.
That's a great list, guys. That's a solid list.
Oh, yes. That is our list. I guess the show's over now.
No, I've got 5 more.
I'm going to watch Trick or Treat immediately tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for watching it. You will. Like I said, I guarantee you will enjoy it. You will very much enjoy it.
So to close things out,
I hope all of you enjoy it too. Watch our movies and enjoy them.
Don't watch the Twilight Zone movie. It's okay. You can skip it.
Only watch my movies.
Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, which could have been recorded a week ago. Basically, that was the episode that holds up the most.
Yeah, it is a great episode. I agree with that.
Watch as many of these movies as you can because there's a quiz later today, which will go up at 7. So be ready for that. Continuing on, I hope you enjoyed our list. If you didn't, let us know. If you did, let us know. If you have your own list, let us know. Write down the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Join the Mack Flash Patreon for more exclusive videos and games and so forth. Go to wearitproud.ca for all your Mack Flash merch. And unless I'm forgetting anything else, we can close it out. Android Brian, Mike Spooky Scott Deadspans. I've been Pat Robbins. That's one exit for sure. Thanks.
Just make him sit there forever.
Yeah, we're not ending the show until AB says gives us a proper goodbye.
Goodbye from the girl.